Welcome. Today I want to talk about a few different rafts, and in particular the SOTAR, the Maravia, and the AIRE. And these three different brands all make really good rafts, and they're compared to each other the most. So I kind of want to do a quick video about why they're different, kind of their pluses and minuses. And first of all, they're all just really good rafts. The manufacturers, they're all really well made by good manufacturers, all made in the US, and so they're pretty similar. And they're also really similar because they all use urethane fabric in some way. So first I want to talk about SOTAR, the SOTAR rafts, and I have a bunch of these. We use them on our rogue river trips, and they're made in Oregon, which I really appreciate. And this is some SOTAR cat tubes right here, and SOTAR uses just a plain urethane fabric, and urethane is the best material, I think, for holding air in a boat. It's durable, it's great for like getting poked. If you took a knife at it, it probably wouldn't get a hole in it. I mean, it could, but it probably won't. And it's just, long term it holds air really well as a material. And you know, some distinct advantages of SOTAR, again, they just use a straight fabric that they get and they construct the rafts. And so some huge advantages to just plain urethane fabric. One, it makes the lightest boats. If weight's a consideration for you, you're going to really like the SOTAR because they're just simply light boats. If you're carrying them into rivers, maybe a mile, or you just don't like carrying heavy things, I think you might really appreciate how light they are. And the other thing is they slide over rocks really easily. So if you're doing a lot of low water runs or sliding over rocks is really important to you, the SOTAR is probably the way to go. They slide over rocks the best of any raft that I know of. The other thing about SOTAR is they're really good about letting you, they're limited, their fabrics are limited to what they can get because they don't make their fabrics. They get them in certain colors. But based on the colors they have, they can do really cool things. Like this is a yellow boat with some really nice blue accents. I threw some blue D-rings on. I get to kind of pick and choose how I want it to look. And so they're really cool about letting you use different fabrics in different parts of the boat. And they're also really good at letting you make a custom design. They're really known for their custom abilities. So, if you want a 14-foot boat but you want bigger tubes, or you want it 6 inches longer, or you have some crazy design, you can just call up SOTAR and do it. It's really cool if you know what you want and it's specific. If you're throwing in a crazy idea out there on a $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 boat and it turns out it's a bad idea, it's an expensive test. And so SOTAR also, they sell stock boats, but they allow you to customize if you want. And it's something a lot of people like to do. So moving on from SOTAR is the Maravia. And Moravia Boats, this is some cat tube. Maravias are basically a PVC base. And PVC isn't the best material to make boats out of. It's fine, but it just sort of degrades and gets leaky. I can't really explain it, but the quality of PVC boats is a little suspect in terms of holding air. And so what Moravia did was took a PVC base and they sprayed it, they cover it in urethane. They put it into the shop and they just spray coat it in a urethane coating. And this is what it looks like. It makes for a pretty stiff boat. These boats don't roll really well, but when they're blown up, they are strong. And I have to say, I think that Moravia makes the strongest boat out there. If durability is a big deal too, you don't want boats to pop while you're on trips, and you want them to last a long, long time, I would have to say that Moravia is the best in terms of durability. But what you give up a little bit is the ability to roll them. They're pretty tough to roll. So, if you need to roll a boat often, like you don't have a garage to store your boat in, so you're rolling it, putting it in your car, driving it home, it's, they're kind of a pain to roll. They don't roll well. They kind of make these kind of bulky objects. And SOTAR is the same, not as bad as Moravia in terms of rolling, but SOTARs aren't exactly easy to roll either, but Moravias are a little bit more difficult. And both SOTARs and Moravias, when you roll them, they kind of create these creases here, and these creases are vulnerabilities. If they get in transportation, when you roll it, somehow abraded, this is how you'll get a hole. And if I was to guess, most holes in Moravias happen in transporting them to and from the river more than actually on the river. So that's one consideration with Moravias. The other cool thing about Moravias, though, one of the cool things about Moravias is that they do really cool custom colors and custom looks. This is my cat boat that I got last year. It's this really beautiful baby blue. I love this color, but they also make this beautiful light green boat. It's just so beautiful. I actually really struggled to decide which awesome color I wanted when I got this one, and I went with the baby blue. But because they spray their boats with urethane, they can mix colors into them and do some really cool colors on their own. They also have the Dreamboat program where you can, if you can, you know, I think it's like if you can think of it, they'll make it. I don't know, some tagline. But basically, you know, if you want to put Donald Duck on your boat, you can put Donald Duck on your boat. You know, if you love Tyrion Lannister and you think he's going to be the king of the Seven Kingdoms in a few years, and you want to put Tyrion Lannister's face on your front of your boat, cool. You want Jon Snow? Jon Snow's going to go there. You know, so they have really a high ability to do custom graphics and all kinds of cool things. So I have to say, I think their boats are the best looking, just in terms of their colors, how nice they look, because of the durability and the custom things they can do. And so the last thing about Moravia is that's important to know is they have a drop stitch floor, which, you know, people like and don't like. And what a drop stitch is it's a technology the military developed and to make inflatable airplane wings, which is crazy, right? And basically you take two pieces of material and you put a bunch of strings between them, a lot of strings, and as you inflate that, it gets limited by the strings. And you can put a lot of pressure in drop stitch. They're made for high pressures, and it makes for a nice flat surface. And so Moravia has chosen to do that for the floor. And there's a couple advantages to the drop stitch floor. One of them is that it's just a nice surface to stand on. It's very stiff. So when you're in a regular raft, the floor kind of gives a little bit and it's squishy. When you're in Moravia, it just feels solid. It's just a nice solid surface, which is a really nice thing. Also, because there's a low surface area under the boat, they spin easier. And they make those drop stitch floors at their factory. And I think they're pretty durable. I haven't really seen any problems with Moravia floors. I'm sure they exist, but I personally haven't seen many problems with Moravia floors. So I appreciate that they're making them there in their factory in Idaho. So the downsides of these drop stitch floors, there's two things people say, and they're pretty true, I think. They don't track as well. If tracking's important to you, the drop stitch floor isn't going to be the best for that. And I think that, you know, a good boater can run any floor. You know, they give up the tracking, but you get the ability to spin. And so, you know, it shouldn't matter that much. And if you learn out of Moravia, you probably don't even notice. But if you're used to like an Avon or a SOTAR that has an I-beam floor, you probably aren't going to be too happy with the way those boats track. But again, a good boater can overcome that. And the other thing that people say, and it's true, the floor can get really stiff. It can handle a really high pressure. So when you go over a rock, and that stiff floor tends to get stuck on rocks. And it's definitely a weakness in the drop stitch floor, unless you let some air out. So if you just deflate that, if you know you're on a rocky river where you're going to go over rocks, just deflate the floor, you know, and then solved. It's perfectly fine. You don't have to have the floor fully inflated all the time. So that's Moravia, and they make really nice boats. But finally, I want to talk about AIRE. And, you know, AIRE has its own construction process. And it's pretty unique. You know, they kind of went out on their own and developed their own kind of idea, and it's really smart. This is an AIRE back raft. I don't own any AIRE rafts, but I own a bunch of these back rafts. These are 10-pound inflatable kayaks, and using the AIRE design, this outer fabric is some super high-tech thing. I think it's called Dyneema, something like that. But the idea with AIRE rafts is they have an inner bladder that's urethane. So like I said, urethane is pretty much the best material for holding air. And so inside of here is this urethane bladder of really thin urethane. You could probably float on the bladder, but because it's so thin, it's not terribly durable. And so what they've done is they've put an outer, you know, coating. It's not really a coating. It's actually an outer layer that's another fabric over the top. In this case, this outer layer that's protective is Dyneema. On most of the rafts, it's PVC. Now, PVC, like I said, is not the best material for holding air, but that outer layer doesn't need to hold air. So PVC is an inexpensive material. It does a lot of good things, and if it just has to be a protective coating, it's great. And so they've kind of done the best of both worlds in terms of the inner urethane bladder and the outer PVC layer. And, you know, if you look inside of an airboat, you know, here's a zipper. You can unzip this layer, and that urethane bladder is inside. And, you know, it's a pretty innovative design. I have to say, of these three companies, I think that these are the least durable. Which, you know, it's still pretty durable, because the SOTARs and the Moravias are incredibly durable boats. This is just less durable because the PVC isn't as strong. And I'm actually okay with that, because I think that AIRE, you know, AIRE has definitely the best warranty. All these rafts have 10-year warranties, but AIRE has a 10-year no-fault warranty. If you break the boat and it's your fault, you just ship it to them and they fix it. Done. They don't pay for shipping. If it's a manufacturer defect, they'll pay for shipping. But if it's your fault, they'll fix it for 10 years. Doesn't matter what happened to it. And that's impressive. And I've heard a lot of stories about how they've gone above and beyond the expectations and really backed up their product. And I feel that AIRE backs up their product better than any raft manufacturer out there. I mean, that includes all of them. And I know that because these back rafts I ordered, we've taken these places that we shouldn't have taken them. We've really beat them apart and tested them, to their limits in some really rocky, sharp situations. And as you can see, there's a bunch of repairs in the bottom. And each one of these, I just put them in a box, shipped them to AIRE, got them back a week or two later. No questions asked, really easy to work with, and I'm super appreciative of that. And I don't want you to think that because this has a bunch of holes in it, AIRE boats tend to get this many holes. This is just like me abusing these boats, And again, this is a thin material that is strong, but it's not, infallible. So the other thing, while they may not be as durable as SOTAR and Moravia, they're much easier to fix in the field. So if you're out on the river and you have to fix either a SOTAR or a Moravia, you have to pull out glue and sandpaper, and you have to know how that stuff works. And you have to be good at boat repair, and it's tough. And if there's cold weather or rain or snow, nearly impossible. I mean, you have to be a true expert in repair to handle a repair on those boats in tough situations. With an AIRE, if you need to do a field repair, the inner bladder typically doesn't tear. It's that urethane in there. I'd say, in my experience, it probably tears 20% of the time, both the outer and inner layer. And if it does, you put this thing called Terraid, which is basically just a sticker over it, and that takes care of the inner bladder. And this outer membrane, I guess it's called a membrane, whatever, this outer layer, you sew up. And you get a needle and thread that comes in the repair kit, and you just sew this up. It takes less time than gluing, although it's a little tedious. It does take less time, and I think it's easier, but you need some experience sewing. You can't just, my first time I ever sewed in one of these, my first couple times, I kind of messed it up. And now I've done it a bunch, and I feel very comfortable sewing them, and I actually, much prefer repairing an AIRE boat by sewing it up than any other boat out there. So, like I said, they aren't as durable as these boats, but I think the warranty's better, AIRE backs them up better, and when you need to repair them in the field, I think it's a little bit easier. So, kind of a trade-off there, but something that's important. And, keeping with AIRE, one thing I really like about the company and what they're doing is they're really innovating. I think out of any rafting company, they're doing the most innovation. They have engineers who are looking at new fabrics, they're looking at new designs, they're trying things out, they're doing a ton of testing, and they have a lot of good ambassadors out in the field pushing the boundaries of what can be done in rafts and doing some pretty impressive things and giving them feedback. And I really see AIRE actively trying to get better all the time, and I really appreciate that. I think that's what kind of moves our whole industry. And finally, well, there's two more things. These three boats, they're the easiest to roll and store. So if you're going to roll your boat every time or often, you might want to go with an AIRE just because they're much easier to roll. And they roll up into a smaller, a little more compact package that doesn't have the issues with the corners in transport. So you can just throw it in the back of your truck and then drive it home. So I'd say in terms of rolling a story, they're the best. And I'm going to make a claim here that I hope is going to get some backlash. And I want comments. I'm almost egging you on to prove me wrong. But I'm going to say AIRE rafts are the least flippable of the three. And here's why. Two reasons. First of all, the floors actually take on water. And a lot of people don't like the fact that you get water in the floors. And actually, it's kind of annoying sometimes if you get water and you have to store it in your house. I guess it could get moldy. I mean, the water stays in there unless you drain it all really well. But the thing about having the water in the floor is it adds weight to the bottom of the boat, and it lowers the center of gravity. And so I feel like that water down there and that weight actually helps the lower center of gravity and makes them less likely to flip. And I really believe that. The other thing that makes them less likely to flip is they have a little bit of give. Both SOTAR and Moravia, you pump them up pretty tight. They're kind of stiff and they kind of have a plastic feel. They're really very stiff boats. So when they hit a rock or a wave, when the front goes, the whole boat kind of goes. It's one big stiff thing. Where the AIREs there's a little bit more give. And And so, you know, if the front kind of starts twisting, the back doesn't necessarily twist, and they have a little bit more give, whether again you're in a big wave or hitting a rock. So for those two reasons, the flexibility of the boat and the water in the floor, I'm going to claim the AIREs are less flippable. And again, I could be way wrong, but based on my experience, my limited data set, I think I've seen way fewer AIRE boats flip than either SOTARs or Moravias. And I've personally flipped a handful of SOTARs, and I should probably blame myself, and it's probably my fault, but I'm going to attempt to say it's because they're so stiff. And again, I love having discussions about this comment, so if you want to add comments in the comment section below, tell me I'm an idiot and I'm wrong, or be like, yeah, no, that makes sense, I've had that same experience. I'd love to know if you had that same experience. That's how I actually learned quite a bit through boating. So that kind of sums up AIRE. And I just want to say, finally, on the subject of these rafts, you know, these are three just great companies. They're all making boats in the US. They all have factories here. They all have repair centers here. When you buy a boat from any one of these three companies, you're getting a good boat backed up by a good company. And you're supporting, you know, American-made products. And I really feel like if you can afford to and you want one of the best-made boats, one of these three manufacturers is the way to go. Now, there's other great manufacturers. Rocky Mountain is doing cool stuff. Wing is starting to make boats again, which is pretty exciting, and I'm interested to see what they end up doing. Jack's Plastic Welding is another good company, and there's more that I haven't mentioned. There's a lot of companies that are doing a good job. I just have the most experience with these three, and these are the three I feel like they get compared the most often. So that's kind of why I'm talking about these here. And I can attest that like the people that work there and the companies are really well run. And I think what's really important to me is that these three companies are also involved in the community. When we have outfitter shows, they come to the outfitter shows and support the shows by being there, but also by donating products for silent auctions. You know, they're at river festivals and they support river festivals. They donate to these a lot of the nonprofit boating groups, and the people who work for these companies are actively involved in the whitewater community. And I think that's something that's particularly important to me, because the community, you know, is kind of what brings us all together, and having raft manufacturers that support them is a really big deal. So yeah, that's all I kind of have to talk about on the three boats. If you have any questions or comments, again, you know, you could tell me I'm a complete idiot. Do that in the comments below. You can be like, yeah, totally, I agree, that all makes sense. Love to hear that. But you know, if you give me feedback in a really positive way, I'll be stoked. If you want to, you know, just rip me apart, you know, I'll try to be positive in my comment back to you. And finally, if you like these shows I'm doing, I've kind of been enjoying doing this. Hit the subscribe button if you want to see more shows as I post them. You get them right away, and I just like to see how many subscribers I can get. So please think about subscribing. That's all for this time, and I look forward to the next one. Thanks.